Okay, guys, so today we have a very, very special guest.
Yes, we do.
Running for Broward County Sheriff Office. Please welcome Mr. Andrew Smalling.
Yes. Do you hear the clapping?
Maybe I can add some.
You can add it. Okay, that could work. Woo! Yes, welcome to These Two Girls podcast with your hosts, Candy and
Cheyenne.
Well, I'm happy to be with these two girls.
All right, thank you.
You guys are women.
Well, yeah.
Wow, no one's ever done that before. Okay, point taken.
That's true.
All right, yeah. Well, welcomes. How are you doing today?
Doing good.
Staying safe over there.
Yeah, it was kind of quiet today, right?
It was quiet on the streets.
With what's going on. Very eerie because normally, because I work at Broward College now.
Okay.
So I actually retired from law enforcement.
Okay.
I did 24 years.
Wow.
In law enforcement, 20 years with the sheriff's office, and 4 years with the city of Lauderhill.
And now you want to get back into it?
Yeah,
okay.
You know what? It's like a bug that didn't leave. It's like something that's in me.
Nice. Okay.
It's
passion.
Yes,
it's heart.
Passion is a good.
Okay.
Or you just like to beat yourself up. It's like self-destructive.
Oh gosh.
Dang,
Shy. Dang.
I mean,
Okay.
I mean, look, I don't know anything about like those positions, but I just assume that they're very, difficult jobs to hold. And, you hear about people who are even in just like social work, how hard it is for them to be like on the front lines of things like that. I can't imagine so, I hear a lot of people quit all the time. So if you're going back, you must.
Yeah. You must like it.
It's tough inside and out, my trajectory, it started really in my adult life in the military.
Okay.
So I kind of always did service, if not to the country, then to my community. And so that's something that's always been a part of me. And like you say, I think some of the difficulty is both inside and out.
Yeah. Because
there's difficulty inside the police department dealing with the officers and some of the struggles that they have to go through,
right.
And some of the complaints that they get, and all of that kind of stuff. And then outside, dealing with the community, so there's both struggles in and out, within and without most police departments and sheriff's office. So you're right, maybe I forgot about some of those things during my retirement. But you're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, let's do your anyway. We would never do that. We never do that. But you're saying that, so back up a bit. So you said that you're at Broward College currently. So what do you teach? What subject do you teach?
Oh, so I'm an associate dean.
Okay.
So I'm over the criminal justice program.
Nice.
When I left law enforcement in 2015, I was actually an adjunct faculty member. So I was teaching criminal justice courses, criminal justice, intro to criminal justice, criminal investigations, forensics, those types of courses. And I did that for 2 years, full time after I left. I did it as an adjunct while I was working in the police department for about 7 years. So I did my full-time job in the police department during the day, and then in the evening I would teach evening classes. So I did that for a while, and I loved that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I really like that. So when I retired, I figured, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Be a professor, and opportunity came up for me to be promoted to an associate dean.
Okay.
So I took it, and that's what I do now. So I'm over the faculty, full-time faculty, and adjunct faculty who teach criminal justice at Broward College.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So then let's back up.
Okay, back up.
Right.
Okay.
So we said that you're running to be the sheriff of Broward County.
Correct.
So what is that job really?
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a massive job. So the sheriff's office is the biggest law enforcement agency in Broward County. So the head of the BSO is the sheriff, right? And everybody else that works, the patrol deputies are deputy sheriffs, so they're actually his deputies. The sheriff is an elected position. So when I was the chief of police in Lauderhill, that was an appointed position for a city police department. So it's appointed either by the mayor or by the city manager.
Okay.
But to be the sheriff, you have to run for election, a campaign. Just like if you're running for governor or if you're running for mayor or whatever. So it's the same type of thing. You got to get elected. But you're a law enforcement agent. You're a law enforcement chief of that department.
Okay.
And BSO has a lot of different parts to it, a lot of different components. So it's not just law enforcement. They also have fire rescue. They also have the jail, corrections. They also have child protective services. They also have communications, a part of the communications dispatch system. So there's a lot going on within that agency.
And you're saying the sheriff covers all of that?
Yeah, it's about 6,000 employees that work in the sheriff's office. Their budget is almost $1 billion. And they have, so there's 32 cities in Broward County. They cover about 17 cities. BSO.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a heavy plate there.
Yeah, it's a big job.
That's a big, yeah.
It's a big job.
And you're ready.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be
We're ready. We're ready. You know, and even asking if you're ready, I hear a accent.
An accent, a Jamaican accent.
What?
I just wanted to. I mean, I'm not throwing you all shy, but I just heard a little accent in there. Accent. I just want to, what's the accent that I hear there? Is there something there? Is there?
Yes, a Jamaican accent.
Oh, okay.
All
right. Big up yourself. Why did we go there automatically? Like we both said at the same time.
That's the thing to do.
That's the thing to do.
Well, talking about Jamaica, right? So I was born in Jamaica, but I left when I was young.
Okay.
I left Jamaica when I was 8 years old.
Oh.
So I did most of my.
Do you even have your card still?
Yeah, I got my Jamaican card. As a matter of fact, I got a Jamaican passport.
Oh wow.
Okay.
But so most of my growing up was in New York because when I left Jamaica, my parents went to New York, and so I did, most of my growing up was there, and then we moved down to Florida in 1982. To go to college.
Why do you chuckle? Why do you chuckle, Shane?
I was like 1982.
Right? No.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't born yet.
Yeah, no.
It was still a few years.
Audience, please know that we were not born and that these two girls were not here, okay? All right.
Okay. So, but I go back to Jamaica. My wife's Jamaican, so
okay.
I go back. Yeah. So I go back to Jamaica often. And I even worked with the Jamaican police on different projects. Stuff like that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was I gonna say? All right.
I'm always throwing her off. I do that.
So did you spend, at what age were you about that time when you left New York and moved down here?
So I left New York to come down here to go to college.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to Florida Institute of Technology in Melbourne, Florida.
Because what I was going to say, I don't know if you had any experience with the police system there versus here. There's a lot of talk. New York is very prominent when they talk about like stop and frisk and those kind of things back there. So I don't know if you had any comparison to make with like how things were when you were in the police force here versus.
Well, growing up in New York, by the grace of God, I didn't interact with the police too much.
Okay.
I stayed away from the police, and I think it was really, it is the grace of God because I used to travel a lot, right? So I think about this, and I always tell my parents, I said, boy, you must have had a lot of trust in me because I lived in the Bronx, and I used to go to school in Queens, and I used to travel by train on the train to go to Queens to go to school. Mm-hmm. And that, you're talking about a high schooler traveling like that and not getting into any problems and things like that. Mm-hmm. And, and the school that I went to was predominantly male school, so of course, we had fights and stuff like that. But I guess it was just a different time, Mm-hmm. And I just, growing up, I just stayed away from the police as much as I could.
I do notice, like, in New York, there's a lot of like that, where kids are a lot on their own, mm-hmm. on this, public transportation versus mm-hmm. here.
Yeah.
Plus public transportation isn't very efficient in Florida, in Broward County, so it's, it's not the same. Yeah.
So I was very fortunate, I mm-hmm. think, in that sense. And, stop and frisk, I remember, I was in law enforcement when the stop and frisk started up in New York. And that really set us back, not just in New York, but I'm talking about law enforcement in general, even down here, because, just that whole focus of it being, mostly directed towards like black males, mm-hmm. They found out mm-hmm. Through their statistics, it really set us back, I think, with police relations.
Yeah.
So I'm here on your website.
Okay.
And you guys can check that out too. I'm sure he'll plug that at the end. So
no, you can plug it now. SmallingForSheriff.com.
Okay, you did that. All right. Get it on there. So on his website, it says here that you created a strategic enforcement team to focus on crime involving illicit drugs and violent gangs. Right. So when I hear of drugs and gangs, it's clearly what I see on TV. I see the Bloods and the Crips, and they're over there and they're over here, and the shooting happening across the road, and just a lot of stuff that you see on TV. And I'm not sure if I see anything like that here. So if you could just tell us a little bit more. Are there gangs? Tell us a little bit more about...
County.
Really?
There's gangs in Broward County. So that piece that I'm talking about, and, mm-hmm. and everything that is on my website mm-hmm. and that I talk about my platform is based on experience. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. that particular experience that I'm talking about with drugs and gangs and violence is particular to Lauderhill. So when I came to Lauderhill, there was
you have gangs in Lauderhill?
Yeah. I don't want to scare anybody.
I'm just saying. When you say gangs in Lauderhill, I'm like, where?
There are.
Yeah. Okay.
And, some of it is geographic. Some of it comes from Crips and Bloods. There are actually Crips and Bloods.
In Lauderhill?
In Broward County.
In Broward County.
Not just in Lauderhill.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay. I'm sleeping. Okay.
So, and like I said, a lot of it is geographical, right? So, I didn't know about the Parkway Boys. There's Parkway Boys. I know y'all heard about that, right?
Yeah.
So they actually term themselves, right?
Okay.
But if they fit certain criteria, so they have a name, they have a color, they have a common theme, and they do some criminal activity, that's considered a gang. Mm-hmm. And they'll fight each other over territory. So mm-hmm. if you're from Deep Side and you go over the Parkway, you're looking for a fight, or the other way around, right? So that's one area, and some of that is juvenile stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then you also have drug gangs here, and some of these drug gangs are affiliated with Jamaica. So you have, because Lauderhill has a large Caribbean population,
yes, right,
and predominantly Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have individuals that come from Jamaica who are in the drug trade. They'll settle here and they'll continue that drug trade. And sometimes they'll still have that connection to Jamaica, or they may have connections throughout the United States, which we've had. We've had gangs that are based here in Fort Lauderdale and Lauderhill that have tentacles that reach out to Atlanta, that go out to Texas, that go out to California. So
wow. Yeah. I mean, I live like Deep Side adjacent.
Right, yeah.
So I've heard, yeah, you know. So
you know what we're talking about.
I know, yeah.
I mean, I remember because when I attended Piper High School, and I remember, you know, you'd hear of the gangs, but I just thought it was just, I don't know, just nothing serious, you know. But yeah, I heard of Deep Side and yeah, Parkway and all of those. But I just thought it was just boys just rapping and Underground Station and the cool boy. I don't know. I just never thought that it was something that serious, you know. But I guess I can see how it could turn into something serious.
So when we talk about maybe like some of the juvenile stuff where it's like kids who think that they've found some kind of community in these little groups and they're participating in criminal activity, what is the stance on that when it comes to children, you know, under 18? How harsh are the punishments for certain things? And are we talking, you know, little bags of weed, or are we talking like hardcore drugs? You know, what is it that you see out there, and then how is that dealt with children?
That's a good question. And I guess how it's dealt with is dependent upon the type of crime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's possession, you know, possession of weed or whatever, possession of alcohol, I mean, that's one thing, you know. But if you start getting into, you know, robberies, because some of these individuals, they will do stick-ups, you know, and that's a pretty serious crime. And for law enforcement, robberies, especially with a firearm or some type of weapon, is very serious because law enforcement believes that can lead quickly to a homicide, to somebody being shot, somebody being hurt, you know, something like that. So the robberies, things like that, we take seriously. As far as, you know, possession of weed and things like that, you know, it's really up to the law enforcement agency how to handle that, you know, and sometimes in particular the cops, you know. For instance, school resource officer. I used to be a school resource officer in Pompano, and you know, there are certain things that go on campus with kids that we would say, okay, well, you know what, these are just kids. They're trying, you know, they're but for the grace of God go any one of us, you know, at that age.
All right.
You know, and a lot of times it'd be like, hey, listen, don't do this again, you know, or second chance, whatever mechanism that we can use without putting that kid into the system, you know, if we don't have to. If it's a violent crime, you know, bets are off sometimes. You know, if it's violence, if you know you're beating somebody up, if you're stabbing somebody, if you're shooting somebody, you know, that's a problem. Yeah. If you're a major drug dealer where you're into narcotics that are, you know, are very hazardous type narcotics, you know, you talk about, you know, maybe your methamphetamines, your crack, you know, your you know, fentanyl, all those types of things, you know, those are pretty serious drugs. But I think that if we can get these kids, if they make mistakes, you know, and let them know that, hey, listen, this is not the way to go, and get them on the right path, and they listen, you know, and take that second chance, or maybe even sometimes that third chance, and get right. I think that's a better thing than having them go to jail, you know, and get into that system, or juvenile detention, because I don't think that works in cases where there is minor crimes where, you know, nobody's really getting hurt or something like that, and they're learning. You know, they want to make a difference. They want to make a change. I think that's probably a better way to do it.
Do you think is the juvenile system here set up for those kind of changes, or is that something that might need some work?
I think it probably needs some work. You know, I think one of the things that we lost, we used to have what's called a juvenile assessment center. I think it still exists, but it's not as robust as when I was in law enforcement, and specifically when I was with the sheriff's office, because the juvenile assessment center was someplace that you could take a juvenile delinquent, like somebody who doesn't want to go to school, somebody's cutting school, you know, somebody who's caught like shoplifting or something like that. Take them there, and they would have programs for them.
Okay.
So, you go see a counselor, or if you're cutting school, I remember we used to have the truancy van. They used to go around.
Yeah. I remember that. I think about it now when I see the teens walking on the streets in the daytime. I'm like, no one's gonna roll up on them and find out why are you supposed to be in school? Where are you supposed to be? Because I see them all the time, and because I remember when I was in high school that they were always hiding from the police because they'll roll up and find out where you're supposed to be. Do you have something to show that you're supposed to be out here or on the job training or something, but you're supposed to be in school? So I remember we used to have certain papers on us to show that we are allowed to be out here instead of in school.
Yeah.
But I guess that's no.
Well, what happened? Budget cuts, right? So the everything comes from Tallahassee, and it's based on the governor and the governor's priorities. And juvenile crime just wasn't a priority for them. And that's why that went away. But I remember specifically because I used to do that.
Okay.
I used to pick up, kids that didn't go to school.
No, I've never gotten picked up.
Yeah, truancy.
How do I explain that to Claudette? Galvin, no, never gotten picked up.
Right.
But I've been asked though. Yeah.
And the thing is, the good part about it for us as law enforcement is that they had some place to go. You know what I'm saying? So we could say, all right, we're taking you down to the Juvenile Assessment Center, and we know you're going to spend the day down there. And then at the end of the day, they'd have classrooms, right? And it was law enforcement that was there. So you're going to, they had teachers there too. You're going to behave yourself while you're there, right? And at the end of the day, your parent or your guardian is coming to pick you up.
Right.
You'll
get a whooping right there.
So,
well, not in front of the whooping.
For most kids, that had caring parents, that was probably the worst punishment right there,
The worst part of it,
it helped both sides because now, I think what they're doing is that they're returning these kids to school. And now these kids have like internal suspension, or they put them in like one of these other schools or whatever. And like sometimes it's not working.
Rogers, yes.
Yeah, it's not working for them.
Okay. I have one more serious question. So, we hear a lot about, when you talk about the police brutality, and I know this is just, the police stuff is just a small part of the scope that you described.
Yeah.
But, we can have you back another time and we can talk some more about other things.
I'd love to come back.
But, they say that part of the reason why there's such a heavy ratio of black people feeling like they are harassed by police is that there is something innately wrong with the training of the policemen when they're being trained, how to deal with different, just approaching people. They say that sometimes, they're just kind of like trained and conditioned that black people are hostile, and so a lot of the times they're just already on edge and it's not really their fault. Do you find that might be true to some point in the training, or is that just something that's being said?
Well, there's two parts to your question. First, you have to tell me who they are.
Well, you're absolutely right.
So statistics, or you feel like there's a feeling.
So when you talk about
on.
Like the Black Lives Matter movements, they'll say that there's a disparity in how many black men and women are killed by the police, or just aggressively handled by the police versus their white counterparts. Also, I've seen videos where they show how a black mentally ill person is dealt with, when they're walking around in the street naked and unarmed, versus a white mentally ill person walking around naked, unarmed. It's like, they'll take down the white person, with a taser or, alive, versus the black person would be shot in the streets. There's a lot of examples of that, so it's like, so they're saying the difference is how police are trained to view black people as hostile, so they're more afraid when they're approaching a black person, so they're more likely to shoot versus a white person. So I'm wondering how true that is in terms of like training, like, you know, is there some kind of description that goes out that automatically says black person, you know, what is that? Like, why is that such a big problem?
I'll take a stab at trying to answer that. So, I think that the first part is that it's not a training issue. It's not, and I heard you say that a couple of times, that it's part of the training. It's not. Okay. I can tell you that for sure, because where I work is at the police academy. So the police academy is attached to my office. Also, I'm not the dean over the police academy, but it's in the same area where I work at Broward College, and I know their training program very well. That is not something that is taught. However, I think what we have is law enforcement and law enforcement officers are a segment of society. They're a microcosm of society, right? So what society believes and how society deals with certain issues is kind of the same way that law enforcement does, because we are a segment. Now, as far as the training goes, I think contrary to popular belief, the training is actually how do you stop yourself from having those types of biases, right? Yeah. So there's actually, and you bring up a very good point. This is something that's pretty new, and I had the privilege of working with a lady by the name of Dr. Lori Friedel. She's a white lady, and she is a sociologist. I think she's a sociologist. She might be a police. No, I think she's a police psychologist. But she works at the University of South Florida, and she came up with a theory called implicit bias, right? And you see this in some other authors, even Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you know of Malcolm Gladwell, but he wrote the book Blink, which also talks about how we process certain things within a microsecond, how we make decisions about people in a microsecond, just by what we see, by what we observe. Right. And human beings do that, okay? Regardless of who you are, where you come from, what color your skin is, we make determinations on people most of the time based on observance, right? And now sometimes because of your experiences, you will make those decisions, whether they're right or wrong, based on the experiences that you've had. So a lot of that goes into your experience or your lack of experience, right? Because you've had, we've actually had, believe it or not, in Lauderdale, I've had officers that come from other parts of the country, all right, where they don't interact with black people a whole lot, okay? So their impressions of black people might be what they see on TV. And if it's a negative impression, what are they going to believe? Right. You know, I mean, we all go through that. You know, you could take another race, you could take another culture. Right. You know, if you have never been with that culture or with that race, and you're shown videos, now these videos might be biased or whatever, or these movies might be biased, your impression is going to be based on what you see and what you observe, you know? Yeah. So now when you interact with that person, you've already established your own bias. Right. And sometimes you wouldn't even, you don't know it. That the horrible thing about it, implicit bias, is that a lot of times it's in our unconscious. So we'll make decisions even though we're saying, you know, hey, I'm not prejudiced against that person.
Exactly.
But it's already, it's in the back of your mind. It's already deep in your subconscious. And sometimes you don't even know you're acting upon it. Because you're saying, hey, I'm not prejudiced. I'm not biased against people, you know.
I wonder, I think that's where like diversity training would comes into play, you know. Yeah, because I've seen too where, you know, there was something where maybe it was like a Miami area, but the police, this woman, she was just emotional and expressing herself, and they assumed her to be hostile. And I think, and just watching the video, I was like, where are they getting this from? Like, I can tell from knowing how women behave, you know, black women behave, that she was just trying to express herself and not in, you know, and that you could just tell that it just didn't connect. And I even see that, I was telling some people before, I see that in medicine too, where doctors don't understand, you know, a black person, you know, how when they're expressing themselves, like there's these biases in their head where they just don't connect that this person just doesn't understand what they're saying, and they relate it to like, oh, they just don't care about what I'm saying. We
experienced that the other day when we went to dinner in Atlanta with the owner of the restaurant.
Yeah, you know.
The girl was just talking to him, just trying to explain herself, and he's thinking she's having an attitude and she's being rude.
Rude to him.
She's just trying to explain herself. So I hear what Shine is saying.
And that, you know, it's I think for us, blacks, you know, we express ourselves. You know, we're emotional, right? Like so blacks and Hispanics, you know, are very emotional folks, you know, and so sometimes that can be seen as being aggressive, right? Yeah. So if you have somebody that says, you know, hey, well, you know, what you doing? What you doing? You know, or whatever, putting their hands up and stuff like that, it's like, whoa, what are you doing? You know, now you're being aggressive, right? Or the black woman, where she has her head and her head is, you know, going back and forth, that can also be aggressive, seen as aggressive. So yeah, those and you're right, it's absolutely training. Yeah. And diversity training is very much, now I hate to say diversity training, because I think diversity training has gotten a bad rap. You know, a lot of times when you talk to a person that is not of color, when they hear diversity training, I think what they sometimes hear is that, oh, we got to go to this training because people think that we're prejudiced, you know, or we discriminate, and that's a lot of times what they hear. You know, that when you say diversity training, it's almost like a buzzword of, you know, well, you don't know how to understand certain people, so we got to tell you how to understand certain people. You know, I think it's all about being in that environment wherever you work. You know, one of the greatest things that I've seen when I was in Lauderdale, and I go back to Lauderdale, I mean, I was in Lauderdale Lakes, and I was in all over Broward County when I was with the sheriff's office, but my last law enforcement experience was in Lauderdale, so it's the freshest to me. But I think one of the greatest things that I've experienced, and something that I really love being there, was when I had officers that are white officers or Hispanic officers or whatever, and they would tell me about Jamaican food, right? And they'd be like, yeah, I'm going down to the roadie shop, or I'm going down and getting some jerk chicken and stuff like that, which told me that they were embracing the community. Right, yeah. You know, they were embracing that part of the culture, you know. It doesn't mean that, you know, they're fully on board with everything in that culture, but at least they're trying. They're making an attempt. They're making an attempt, and I think that's important, because policing, we have to know the people that we're policing, exactly. Right? Yeah.
All right, we'll lighten it up a little bit, and then we'll, you know. So I have a personal question. Okay. One of my first speeding tickets was from the...
One of your first, so you've had a few.
Two. two.
That's not bad.
No, yeah, two.
I didn't say
Oh, okay.
It's just he said one
But
of my first.
I had been driving for years, and then all of a sudden I got pulled over on the highway. I guess I was going like 85 and a 70, whatever. And I got a ticket, right? Now, from the BSO officer, they're the ones that's usually on the highways mostly.
No, it's the state trooper.
State trooper. Oh, see, I mixed that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, now my question is no longer valid.
No, because
I was going to say, there's a consensus in Broward County, or at least in Florida, that if you get pulled over by the state trooper, you're getting a ticket. It doesn't matter. Like, a lot of people will say that they have never not been pulled over by the state trooper and not get a ticket. Whereas if you get pulled over in your city by the local police department, they might have a little bit more leniency and, like, you know.
I've been let go by a state trooper.
By a state trooper?
Yes.
Wow. I've never heard of that.
Yes, I have.
So do you still want to ask the question?
I've gotten a ticket before from a state trooper, and I've gotten released from a state trooper before.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, then my next question is, how do I get out of a ticket?
No, I can't help you with that.
Really?
Well, actually, I can't.
You know, you're on the These Two Girls podcast. What you gonna do? You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna answer that question.
Okay.
Don't speed.
Don't speed.
Yeah, I'll get you out of the
Sometimes
ticket.
it's not on purpose, you know?
I understand. They got the left
Sometimes
foot.
you just, you know, you don't even especially these new cars, you know,
right.
they take off.
You know, it feels
don't
so
even
good, you know.
Especially, I drive an older car. If I get behind somebody else's car and it's a new car, I don't even know that I'm going that fast. It's
That's
just
why
like,
they got that big dial.
All right, you right though. You right.
They got the numbers
You
on
smart.
it.
You know what I'm saying? You smart. Well, can I ask a question now, or you?
Sure, go ahead.
I just want to, you know, because I see that are we winding? Are we no?
We're good. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I don't know how many other guys are running for sheriff. How many others running for sheriff?
There's only one, me.
Oh, there's only
That's
one.
only one. That's the only one you need to know.
That's right.
Okay, but so my question.
And that's Andrew Smalling.
Andrew Smalling. Got it. Andrew Smalling. Let's keep plugging that name so they remember.
Yes.
Okay, so what makes you different? What sets you apart? What makes you a big deal? Why should we vote for Andrew Smalling?
And I'll add, while you think about your answer, that I usually do not pay attention, and I don't think I'm the only one. We don't really pay attention to the smaller offices that are running smaller. You know, when the election time is coming around, you pay attention to the big names that are on TV, but you don't pay attention to the elections that are happening in your community as much, and those those are very important.
Those matter.
Affect you
more than right.
Yeah.
And I've tried in recent years to, you know, sit down and look what these people are saying, you know, the different court positions, the different things like that. But it's so hard when you're not paying, when you know, you don't see them as big, you know, they're not paying for ads on TV, you know. So it's hard to get that information sometimes when you're just like reading whatever the points are on the website. So, you know, it would be good to, you know.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, so
what sets you
your
apart?
local races don't have the kind of money that the national
Right.
races have, because they, you know, I mean, look at what's his name, the guy from New York, Bloomberg. He put, you know, what, $500 million into his ads. So we, you know, a lot of us don't have that kind of money to be spending. But what makes me different, to answer your question, is my experience, right? So my experience comes not only from law enforcement, but from also the military and also from academics. So I think I'm a well-rounded individual on all fronts. I have my master's degree, you know, in criminal justice administration. You know, I've taught criminal justice. So I've taught implicit bias, you know, that type of training. So I come with a lot of those things already under my belt. I've had a lot of experiences being a chief of police in Lauderdale. I'm probably one of the only candidates that has actually been a chief of police of a municipality in Broward County. Okay. And Lauderdale has its challenges, you know, and being there has taught me a lot. You know, not only with dealing with the officers that were under my command, but also the community. You know, so I've made those types of inroads not only in Lauderhill, but also in Lauderdale Lakes, because I was the district chief there under BSO for 10 years. So almost half my career with BSO was in Lauderdale Lakes in a upper leadership position. I think that I have a strong vision for what I want Broward County to look like. You know, I think my vision includes better community relations with the people of Broward County. I think that's important. You know, I have a heart for kids, for juveniles, and want to see them succeed in what they do. When I was in Lauderhill, I had a program called the Rock Academy, and it stood for, it was ROK, Rescue Our Kids. And it was a program that we did almost like a boot camp type program during spring break. So we would get children who were not necessarily at risk, but, you know, were acting up, you know, maybe, and parents were starting to see that, and they wanted to get them on the right road and things like that. And it was a very successful program, you know, and so our officers were like drill sergeants and stuff like that, and we'd have a educational component to it and things like that. So, you know, that and a number of other reasons. I mean, just, I think being a visionary, you know, even now with the crisis that we're going through with this coronavirus, right? I'm thinking of things that I would do, you know, or at least even be thinking about, you know. One thing that we haven't touched on, because most of us are involved or thinking more about policing when it comes to, you know, law enforcement in the sheriff's office, is, you know, our correctional facilities, where we have that jail population that is predominantly black and brown. And what are we doing with those individuals? You know, are we trying to help those individuals to become better people, or are we just recycling them, you know, just waiting for them to do their time, come out, you know, have nothing to come to, have nothing to do. So what are they going to do? They're going to turn back to what they know, and then they're going to go right back into the system, right? And so it's like a revolving door. So, you know, there's some, you know, I have thoughts about what I would like to do and what I'd like to see happen with those individuals. You know, even with this current crisis, the coronavirus, you know, thinking about how do we protect those individuals in that setting, and how do we keep our officers,
and I think they're most secure. At risk.
Exactly, of course they are.
In these crowded environments,
of course they are.
And because they're always the ones that are at risk for these communicable diseases.
Of course they are. Of course they are. And you know,
how are we keeping them safe?
Yes, they've done things, you know, bad things. Some of them, not all of them. Right. Some of them, but at the end of the day, they're still people, you know, and they have to be treated like as people, beings. Like human beings, right? So, you know, I think that's important to me. So just, you know, those types of things, you know, I think just being a leader, you know, and having that leadership experience is not new to me, being a leader, and I always seem to end up there. You know, even when I try to stay out of it. You know, even when I went to Broward College, I said, listen, I just want to be a professor. I just want to teach my classes, and 2 years into it, I'm an associate dean, and I'm like, oh, you know. So sometimes I feel like it finds me, you know, that leadership, or you know, maybe some people see that in me, but and I think I have a love for not just law enforcement, but for the sheriff's office, because when I got out of the military, that's where I started. That's where I started my law enforcement career. So I started as a patrol officer and worked my way up. You know, became a sergeant, became a lieutenant, became a captain, and right there, exactly. Started from the bottom. So I kind of know what it takes.
Okay, that's nice stuff. Flights.
I think we're.
So okay, so
I thought you were gonna ask me my favorite music.
yeah,
that's what I was gonna go.
No, can I get there? Yeah, I was seeing if Shine has. If she doesn't have.
That's it for my questions. I think I was gonna give him the opportunity to plug his stuff, and that was very well said.
Yes, he did.
So
and
just Smalling.
You can find out more information about me on my website, SmallingForSheriff.com.
SmallingForSheriff.com.
And you made a good point about running this race, because a lot of what I require, or I wouldn't say a lot, but some of what I require is funding to do this, right? Because I can come out of my pocket, and I've come out of my pocket to help with this campaign, but I need other people to pitch in and help. And we're not talking about thousands of dollars. One of my marquee donations is $20.20, because we're in the year
I was just
2020.
gonna say we don't have any money to give you, but now that you say 20, then we can.
That's what I'm saying.
We can work it out. We can do a little donation.
So if I wanted to donate, if a listener wanted to donate, do they go to the website and donate?
Go to the website.
Okay.
SmallingForSheriff.com.
SmallingForSheriff.com.
And there's a little Act Blue button. We use Act Blue because the national campaigns use Act Blue, and it's a very simple platform to donate.
Okay.
And you can donate any amount on there. The most that you can donate for a single donor is $1,000. That's the max.
Okay.
But it could go anywhere from $5, $10, $15, $20, whatever.
That sounds
skip
good.
that Starbucks.
That's right. Make your own
for the week, right?
Caramel macchiato.
Right, and head to the website and donate. Andrew Smalling. All right, so
SmallingForSheriff.com.
SmallingForSheriff.com. So on a lighter note, so now that we've heard, about the campaign and why you're running and your heartbeat and the vision, I'm sure our audience would like to know some other fun little things about you. So, Mr. Smalling, tell us what kind of music are you listening to? What's playing in your car?
Right. What comes on when you get in your car?
Yes, you get in your car. We all get in there now. We turn on the radio. What's
Bluetooth
playing?
Bluetooth
connects.
Bluetooth connects. All right. So
auxiliary cord. Oh yeah. What do we hear?
What comes on when your Bluetooth connects?
Actually, I took a trip this past weekend. I was up in Orlando, and I was trying to get my my phone to connect to my car, and it kept on going on to this patriotic songs that
Patriotic.
it wasn't what I wanted to listen to, okay, but it was on my phone, and it came out because we were doing this march on Veterans Day. I got a group of people together, and we marched from the Veterans VA clinic about a mile, and then we came back and we had banners and stuff like that. And when we were gathering, I had on my phone on a speaker like patriotic music, for the veterans, because I'm a veteran and I know a bunch of veterans and stuff like that, so they enjoyed that. So that's what came on. So I wasn't gonna listen to that, but
cool. Let's tear that up.
That's what came out.
That's what would come on.
But I love gospel music.
Okay.
Right? I do a lot of gospel. I love reggae music.
Okay.
Like some of the older stuff.
So do you know who Popcorn? You know who Popcorn is?
I know
Vibes Cartel.
I know Vibes.
Okay.
And Movado.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But I don't listen to them all. I mean, I'm more like a Barris Hammond.
Yeah,
a little Buju, every now and then.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in that league. Of course, the late great Bob Marley.
Okay, nice.
Love that, and I like jazz too.
Nice,
because my dad was a big jazz fan.
Mm-hmm.
Is a big jazz fan. He's still around.
Nice.
And so I remember there was a lot of time in our house when he'd be playing some jazz on the records, the ones that actually used to spin and,
Yes, remember.
Before they got all this electronic stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But, so that's kind of what I do. But I'm eclectic. I mean, like when I work out, I listen to a lot of stuff.
Do you listen to hip hop? Do you listen to hip hop?
Migos.
Oh yeah, I know the Migos.
Megan Thee Stallion.
I don't know about all that, but
that's your homework is to figure out who Megan Thee Stallion is.
Yeah. So when you come back again, I need you to tell me.
Megan Thee Stallion.
Megan Stallion.
Megan Thee Stallion.
Yes.
Oh, okay. See, I never heard of that one. See, I was just.
I'll give you just one hint. She's a female hip hop artist.
Yes.
Is she from England?
No.
British? Oh,
no.
there was one. No. See, my kids told me.
Oh, you're thinking about Iggy.
No,
from she was from Australia.
Is it Iggy Azalea?
Yeah.
No, not her.
Not her.
There's
okay.
another one. Because my son's into. See, my kids are.
All right, so let your son, let your kids put you on. Let them put you on game.
Okay.
So he was telling me about some artist. It was a female artist from the UK.
You might be putting us on, cause
right?
See, that's what I'm saying.
Right. You probably okay.
Okay.
Good music.
Hulu or Netflix?
Oh, Netflix. All right.
Okay.
So
Netflix. All right.
Wow.
Did you watch the Love Is Blind documentary?
No. The last Netflix I saw was what was the one with Ava DuVernay?
How they
see us.
Yes.
How they see us.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't watch it.
You still haven't watched that?
Nope.
That was That was heavy.
That was wow.
Yeah.
That was wow.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I think the first part, because there's 4 parts, right? The first part.
Yeah.
And the last part.
The last part was the one for me.
That one, when he was in the prison.
In the solitary.
Ooh,
and, I think because of the mental component to it, really, that was strong for
those
me.
guys, those actors did a great job.
Yeah. That one, he won an award for that.
Yeah, for those guys to have gone through that was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
But now I'm looking forward. So that was the last thing I saw on Netflix, I believe.
You know what Netflix and chill is?
Netflix and chill.
Netflix and chill?
Where you just go through the weekend and just watch Netflix the whole time? No.
That's binge.
No, that's binging.
That's binging. That's binging Netflix.
I'm going to give you some pointers here.
Put them on game.
And chill is what you can do with your wife. Next time y'all have some free time, it's Netflix and chill.
Yeah.
So the two of you just relax and just watch Netflix, and then sometimes you might stop watching the Netflix.
Put a pause.
Then, spend more time with each other.
Right. Netflix and chill.
You get distracted from the Netflix, and then
we don't need Netflix.
I know.
Right. I just put you on game. We just put you on game.
That's just what Netflix and chill is.
Right. So if you hear anybody saying, like one of your employees, they're saying, I gotta go, Sheriff. We're gonna go Netflix and chill.
So
now you know. Oh, okay. You go to Netflix and chill. Okay, wink, wink. You know what I'm saying? So just putting you on there. Okay, cool.
But I'm looking forward, talking about Netflix though, I'm looking forward to the Madam C.J. Walker series that's coming. I think it's either a series or just the one show, I'm not sure. I think it's just the show, but it's coming up.
Okay, I didn't hear about that.
See, I got you on that one, huh? Do you know who Madam C.J. Walker
I do. I just didn't know.
Disrespectful. Yes, we do.
But that would be something I would be interested in.
Jamaican fresh. Yes. Okay. Yes, we do.
Okay.
Well, hey, listen.
I did hear that was coming.
A lot of ladies owe a lot to Madam C.J. Walker.
Yes.
Right? She's the one that hooked y'all hair up.
Yeah, but then the natural movement would say that we didn't need it back then, but now,
different time.
It was a different time.
Yeah.
And it was at that time it was
give
needed
her credit.
For
they needed
the self-esteem and the fitting in
and to work and she
was an entrepreneur.
Yes,
very very much so.
And she's black.
Right.
And a woman.
That's
So,
right.
Shout
Strong
out.
black woman.
any last words for us tonight? Will leave us on a high note.
I think that there is a lot of hope for us. I see a lot of, and when I say us, I'm talking about black and brown people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in general, right? But there's been a lot of regression for us as blacks. Even to the point, I don't know if you guys follow the history of slavery and what they call post-traumatic stress, slavery disorder, and things like that. There's a lot that goes on.
Imposter syndrome.
Yes,
kind of
yes, and it manifests itself in different ways. Even physically, health-wise. When you talk about health, leading health problems always are seen in blacks. A lot of that is because of that stress that's still there. That hasn't been dealt with. So it's good to see a lot of progression with our politicians, with our leaders, with different business people, things like that. So that's good to see. And I think that this county needs somebody who's progressive too. That's a black person, because it is a large population here that is black and brown and Caribbean.
And Caribbean,
and
everything.
So,
hey,
that's right.
Right. I don't know the others, but
and Venezuelans.
Hola.
Yeah, we got Venezuelans, we got Haitians, we got Brazilians, we got you name it, Bahamians, Jamaicans, Trinidadians. I don't want to leave nobody out.
All y'all, everybody.
So we have to be knowledgeable and know that these different cultures are here, and
we
how
matter.
we can work with each other. Especially in something that's important in law enforcement, criminal justice in particular. And when we talk about criminal justice, this is something else that we really haven't talked about. In this election cycle, we're replacing a state attorney. All right.
Okay.
Now the state attorney has been, and this is where you talk about people not knowing about their local politics. The state attorney has been in Broward County, has been in office for the last 40 years. The same person.
What?
Yes. This is the first time that he's going to be replaced. So imagine what happened. Y'all not even 40 years old.
No.
Wow.
Wow.
And you can imagine that this man's been in office for the last 40 years, and how has Broward changed in that time.
Wow, yeah.
Public defender has been in office for a period of time, and these were both white males that are leaving. So there's potential that those offices can change, right?
Yeah.
The sheriff's office, the same with me. Being the first black elected sheriff, of Caribbean.
Oh,
heritage.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, big up yourself. Yes. All right.
So there's some history that's in the making there.
All right.
And it's not just because of that particular title or those characteristics, but I'd like to say, not being overly indulgent of myself, but qualified.
Yeah,
Pick up yourself.
Yeah, qualified. That's exactly right.
Point blank, like we say, period.
Yeah.
Period. Okay.
Don't even downplay the stats. Yeah.
So,
all right,
so
it's a good look. It's a good look.
Well,
so everybody.
He is on Instagram.
Oh, he's on Instagram too. Yes, plug it.
SmallingForSheriff. Okay, on Instagram, and then that's the website, SmallingForSheriff.com, and Smalling is spelled SMALLING.
And another suggestion while we're doing that, one of the things that I saw probably somewhere on Instagram is for the votes for local, and the county, is to write down somewhere on a paper.
Oh yeah, we do
people that you, so like now of Andrew Smalling for sheriff. Write it down so that you know that when you go to the poll, you know that you have your paper already, so you know what names that you're going in for.
And one more thing that's very important is that there are 2 elections. A lot of people don't know this, right? Because the voter turnout is very low for primaries. But primaries are where the decision is made of who goes to the general election. Just like here in the national presidential race, you have Bernie Sanders and you have Joe Biden running in the primary.
Right.
So they're running against each other. So it's important for us to vote to pick one of those candidates that's going to go up against the Republican. So a lot of people don't come out for the primary. A lot of people just come out for the general election because they're like, I'm going to pick who's going to be the next. Well, the person that you want to see go up there and go against the other party, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, that decision is made in the primary.
Right. So what dates do we need to know now? Some dates.
The primary is August 18th. August 18th.
Okay.
So the general election is November, right? So August 18th is the date that you've got to come out, because that's when me and a number of other candidates are running against.
We're not even putting those names out there. We're not even. We're not even.
Other candidates,
right?
But I need for people to come out and support me and vote for me, SmallingForSheriff.
All right.
That's right.
That's right. I like it.
We are so thankful that you joined us today.
Well, thank you.
I will say I've always been quite impressed by you, from meeting you.
See, I didn't know that. Thank
you.
Okay. He all right. Yeah,
his
cool.
demeanor, very calm,
he is cool.
very well spoken. I've always just like admired him.
And he's not standoffish too, because whenever he sees me, he has me up. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. You know how some people, when they're up there, they don't really deal with you. Yeah, he's not. I'm not throwing shade, guys. I'm just saying, speaking in general. But he's cool.
SmallingForSheriff.
SmallingForSheriff. That's these two girls saying SmallingForSheriff. He's not like that, guys.
All right, y'all.
If you
go out
see
and vote SmallingForSheriff. We definitely endorse that.
And we'll post all the links and everything. Remember, go on the website, donate 2020. Let's make it happen, guys. Let's make it happen.
All right. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right.